Hi, let me tell you a story about a shirt that failed. Not because it was ugly, not because it was expensive, but because the company guessed wrong. That's why fashion is one of the best industries to study supply chain management. Now imagine you are running a fashion brand. You are the owner of this brand, you manage the company, you have to decide today what to produce. You have to make decisions about which products you're going to make it for the next season. You have to think about suppliers, the fabric, the designs, everything today. And that's very difficult questions that you have to answer. I'm going to just show some of them. For example, how many units are you going to produce for each one of your styles? Which sizes you're going to produce? Let's imagine we have extra small, small, medium, large, extra large. How many units of each one of these sizes? Now let's put colors just to make things not too difficult. Let's say you have 3, 4 colors. Then you have 3, 4 colors for 5 different sizes, for maybe different styles. That problem can be very complex. And then you have to make decisions about how many products to make. And here's the catch. You decide all this before customers actually buy them. So here's the real question. And the core problem, that's the core problem for any company, especially in fashion. What will customers actually buy? Will black sell more or any other color? Will white sell more? Will red sell more? Which sizes will move? Will medium sell more? Will large sell more? Which one is going to sell? Will trends change, or at least they're going to give some break? Because trends are changing every day with all this social media and internet and all information consumers have. They are changing their minds all the time. That's very critical if you are like planning to design styles and colors and sizes, and if trends change, that's an issue. And we don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows what's going to happen. In supply chain terms, that's called demand uncertainty, which is just a formal way of saying we don't really know what customers will buy. So that's a key concept in supply chain, which is the uncertainty about the demand, the uncertainty about what customers will purchase, and which options people have. Yeah, one of the options is guess, and let's be very positive here, optimist, and imagine that you guess correctly, like everything that like you imagine that you're gonna sell really like is what is correct. But even so, trends move fast. Again, trends are a big issue for any company, especially in fashion. Another issue is seasons end quickly. A season lasts for how many months? Like 3 months, 4 months, maybe five. No, maybe not. Maybe not five. If it is 3 and 4 months and each month has 4 weeks, let's assume it's 4 weeks, then we are talking about 15, 16 weeks. So imagine if you're not selling your products in the first week or first 2 weeks, what is the likelihood that's going to sell later? Right? So it's very critical. The timing issue here is very critical. And also, customers, they move on as they see new products, other products that they like more, they move on. So you don't have time. Even if you guess right, you're still under pressure for these circumstances. Here we have one risk, the risk of being wrong. What if you were wrong in your guess? Well, then there are two scenarios. Well, let's start with one scenario. If we are wrong, one scenario is maybe we made too many, right? And that's called overproduction. Another important concept in supply chain operations management is overproduction. You made more than what the demand really is. What companies can do in this case? If they overproduce, if they make more than what the demand is, what options do they have? One option is give discounts, right? They put the same products for a lower price, giving discounts. They can put into storage and hopefully sell in the next season if their colors, patterns, styles are still maybe worth it. Or just waste the product, is wasted like product. That's all money lost, right? And some companies plan for that. For example, we have here Lululemon. Lululemon is a good example that take into account overproduction because they run a dedicated section called "We Made Too Much" in their website, where they put many products with high discounts. The other scenario is the opposite, right? You made too few. You guess like wrong, and then you made too few products, and everybody wants to purchase. They show up to stores, they can't find your product. That's lost sales, right? You are losing sales because you don't have the product there for customers. What happens in this case? Customers leave, right? They go to store, try to find the product, they cannot find, they leave. What they're going to do? What they will do in this case? Well, they look for other companies, they look for other brands, and competitors win, assuming that they have the product. But competitors can win because you don't have the product for your customers. Again, money lost. So here's the uncomfortable truth. There is no safe decision. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can say. I can say, do this and do that, and you're gonna be safe. So what do companies do? Right? They adapt. They move faster. So they try to be flexible. They try to be more flexible. By me, more flexible is they can adjust their production, they can change their styles during the season if possible, and then they redesign and they introduce what customers want to purchase. They be more careful with the inventory. They don't overproduce and put them in inventory. They don't underproduce or and then lose sales. They manage the inventory. And a good example is Zara. Zara is a good example of adaptation because they're very fast and they're flexible. They have a responsive model. Like they check what is happening in their stores. If products are not selling, they try to figure out why is not they're not selling, and if it's selling, they can produce more quickly. And they have a good model of proximity sourcing, so their suppliers are very close to them. They can reduce the time to make the products and put for sale. Sorry. And now you can translate this into supply chain terms. All this adaptation has means specific concepts for supply chain managers. For example, moving fast really means speed. Companies that have speed, they move faster with their production and their supply chain. Not only production, they have to produce and put into the stores. Flexibility is the ability to adjust, to change their production, their operations, to change maybe the designs during the season, and then produce different like products and put them for the stores. And also they manage inventory, which is really inventory risk. Again, overproducing means having too much inventory. Underproducing means not having enough inventory. So companies in supply chain, and specifically in fashion supply chain, they have to manage inventory risk very well. And these are not just operational choices. That's not something that is to operations people. That's really strategic decisions. And we're going to see today how this um, how these choices, these decisions are very strategic. And this is why fashion is so powerful to study. Okay, why is so powerful to study? Because feedback is fast. If you produce your products, put them into stores, and they do not sell, you know they're not selling. So you understand that maybe customers are not buying them. Or if you're selling, you see them like customers coming and buying, and then your shelves are becoming empty fast. And mistakes are visible. Again, if you make a mistake, you can see that in the store, not selling, accumulating the shelves. That's very good to as an example to understand how visible um, fashion is. And the trade-offs are clear. We're going to talk a lot about trade-offs, but in fashion and fashion supply and in fashion supply chain, the trade-offs are very easy to perceive. So if a companies make a bad decision, you see that in weeks, and that's just the strategy exposed. That in fashion, you can see that the strategy is very clear in our operations in every day in the store day to day business. So what are you going to do in this course? What will you learn in this course? Well, first we're going to start with the promise that fashion brands make, that companies, fashion companies, they make to their customers, to the market. And then we're going to look at their structure. And after looking at their structure, we're going to look at their operations, how they operate, and finally the outcomes. So this is what we're going to learn in this course. So going back to the shirt that failed, it wasn't just a bad guess. It was a mismatch between what the company promised and how it was built to operate. And a good example of a system behind the product is Hermes. Hermes is a good example because they have a highly integrated artisanal model that provides control over know-how, over how to develop their products, how to build their products.